Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I hope this will be a good, useful, practical discussion. We're here to talk about the Small Business Lending Program, the PPP program that we established in the CARES Act at the beginning of this terrible public health and economic crisis. The purpose of the PPP program was to help our small businesses survive at a time when we were all staying at home, socially distancing, shutting down, and unfortunately, our country is not yet in a state where the economy can fully reopen. We can talk endlessly about why that is, but for the purposes of today's discussion, we just need to understand that we are still in an economic crisis. I am proud of what we were able to do through this program. Though over the last few months, we suffered a great deal in New Jersey, including the economic pain that we shared and that our small businesses felt much more than their fair share of, as part of our mostly successful in New Jersey effort to get the coronavirus under control. But my goodness, it would have been so much worse if we didn't have this lifeline from the federal government. In our district alone, the PPP program made loans to almost 15,000 small businesses, over $1 billion of loans coming into just our district. Most of that hopefully will be forgiven. So that's money that came and will not have to be paid back. And that money supported over 130,000 jobs in our district alone. Keep in mind, we have about 400,000 working age adults in the 7th Congressional District. So more than a quarter of the working age adults in our district were supported by this program. Now, there are obviously a lot of problems at the beginning. I think many of us have had a chance then to talk through them. My office has worked with many small business owners one-on-one to try to make sure that they could take advantage of this program at a time when that was difficult, especially for small businesses that were less well-connected, didn't have the kind of relationship with the big banks that some of the larger businesses did. We all heard about abuses in the program, the Los Angeles Lakers and these big national steakhouse chains. That was terrible. It was also, in a way, to be expected because we put together this program so quickly. Over the last few months, we've worked really hard to fix those problems and to try to get greater accountability. We now have more transparency. We know who's been getting the larger PPP loans. We fixed some of the rules and subsequent legislation to give small businesses more flexibility in terms of how much of the loan they spent on non-payroll versus payroll expenses. We extended the period of time in which the money could be used. And on top of that, we're still considering additional changes as part of this very frustrating negotiation that we are still going through in Congress on the next coronavirus package. But there is a lot of consensus on the PPP part of that negotiation. I think most of us believe that the program should be further extended, that we should be open to new applications for a much longer period of time. I think most of us would like to see smaller businesses within that category of small businesses, so perhaps under 300 employees, being able to apply for a second PPP loan. Most of us would like to see a share of the remaining funds or any additional funds we appropriate set aside for very small businesses, like under 10 employees. All of those things are under discussion right now. And I'd love to hear, as part of our conversation today, your input into the next steps that you think we should take. In the meantime, we're very lucky to have with us again Mr. Al Titone from the Small Business Administration. He's here to answer your more technical questions about the program, about forgiveness of the loans, other SBA assistance programs in addition to the PPP, or any question that you think might be relevant to our topic. And I'll stay online as well. I know I'm going to learn a lot from this conversation. And if you have any questions about the next steps in DC and what we're trying to get past in this next package, please throw them at me and I'll do my best to respond. So with that, Al, can you take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
We're not going to see Al, I'm afraid, because he's got some issues with his computer, but he's with us.
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I do apologize. I think my computer's a little burnt out from too much working at home. I'm not sure what it is, but I do have the SBA background up there, and that little purple thing kind of reminds me of an old Star Trek episode, but that probably just is me. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so what I'm going to be going over as soon as we get there, I'm going to go over not just the PPP, a couple other programs that are still available to folks. Obviously, you can't get the PPP anymore, but the EIDL is still available, though the grant part is not, but I'm going to touch on all that. The most recent program is the Community Advantage program, the CARL program. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go over some of the things that covers. Again, this is kind of important. You know, this information is coming out. Even now, there's still stuff coming out, maybe not daily, but 2 or 3 times a week. What I'm giving you is current as of the end of last month. But if you check sba.gov/coronavirus, anything new that comes out is immediately put up there as well as on the Treasury site. Next slide. Again, you know, we kind of all forget, you know, that all of our regular programs are still available to you, especially the counseling through our SBDCs, our SCORE offices, and our women's business centers. And you can find that at sba.gov/NJ. If you look at the lower left-hand side, the resource guide is there, and it has a whole bunch of other information that you might find useful. Next slide. These are way to get hold of our folks at the SBDC, SCORE, and women's business centers. And you can go in there and you can scroll down and see who's closest to you. We have them all over the state. Next, please. Next slide, please. All right, so the Community Advantage Recovery Loan. Next slide. Okay, so this is a pilot program. It's got a very short time frame. Basically, kind of in response to the pandemic and the early days of the pandemic, where a lot of folks were not necessarily getting money in the hands they needed. They came up with this Advantage Recovery Loan specifically designed to help underserved markets. And the idea is it helps small businesses located in these areas try to help them to retool their programs and retool their business to survive in COVID. Next slide. Next slide. Here we go. The biggest differences, now a lot of you probably don't even realize what the CA loan is. That's a Community Advantage loan. And just very brief background, Community Advantage was initially intended to help smaller and underserved markets get some money that they normally might not be able to get from a regular lender. The difference is that for the CARL loan, they're a little more generous and lenient terms. It's a 5-year, but the maturity has to match the use of proceeds. There is a disbursement period. It has to be originated no later than September 20th of 2020 and dispersed by October 1st of 2020. So just so we're clear here, so that doesn't mean you want to try to get your loan originated on September 25th and then expect that it's going to all be done by October 1st. It's not. So you need to be realistic with what you're doing and how you're doing it. They are designed also to provide specific technical assistance that's designed for that small business. So not necessarily a whole, here's your business plan type presentation, which would apply to a lot of different businesses. It would be, here's what you need to address your business plans, help make you more competitive in COVID. They can have, agents can be used for them. The agents can have a fee for the loan, but there are very limited other fees that are allowed, and basically no other fees other than an agent fee and a certain servicing fee the SBA provides. Next. So the technical assistance, what we mean by that is basically helping you. So regardless of what it might be, it's going to help you with your business and getting your business online and et cetera. So it's classes, it could be one-on-one learning, but it's got to be tailored specifically to your business. So whether it's the changing your business model, helping you shift to a more online presence, cash reserve, expense reduction strategies, all of that, but it's certainly not limited to that. It's, again, it's business and industry specific. Next, please. And these are the approved Carl lenders in New Jersey, Community Advantage resource loans. You see EDC, RBAC, and Pursuit, which used to be the 504 company. Next, please. Okay, EIDL. Next slide. So there's been some confusion around this, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on it later, but you can still apply for the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Again, for those of you, I'm sure, I hope at least everybody here who needed one was able to apply, but they're low interest working capital loans for our small businesses. Office of Disaster Assistance decides the max loan size. Unfortunately, for a lot of businesses right now, it's a max loan size about $150,000. Although that actually has been adequate for a lot of businesses, but obviously not everyone. It'll let you pay most business operating expenses, but it's not going to let you refinance long-term debt. Doesn't allow for tax penalty payments or expansion costs, dividends, or bonuses. And that's one of the big things we've been hearing about are expansion costs. You need to be very careful what you use this for, because if you get caught using expenses costs, it could result in some increased costs that you didn't expect from the federal government. The payments on these EIDL loans are deferred for a year. Interest rates are right there, 3 3/4 and 2 3/4, and it's up to a 30-year term. Next slide. I know folks are getting frustrated. I know a lot of you probably had loans submitted for a long time. I would love to be able to assist you, but unfortunately in the district offices, we cannot see anything that's disaster. Disaster is a totally separate system. It's a totally separate area of the agency. So the only way you can really find out anything is contacting disaster customer service at SBA.com or the phone number on the screen, 800-659-2955. Believe me, we wish we could help, but for any number of reasons, we can't get into that program, so we can't help see where it is. Next slide, please.
Al, if I can just interject there.
Sure.
Folks, if they do need help, they can reach out to my office as well, because, of course, we talk to every part of SBA.
Great. And he can probably get you a little more than I can, folks. All right, the advance. So here's where a lot of the confusion's been with EIDL. I've had a number of people tell me over the last couple of weeks, I thought EIDL was done. EIDL, you can still get the loan. The advance is what is no longer available. And for those of you that want to say, well, there's a whole bunch of money out there for advance, why can't some of that be switched in? And probably Tom can explain this better than I can, but essentially Congress approved a certain amount of money in a very specific pot for the advance or the grant. It's just terms have been used individually. Once that money ran out, nothing else can be used for the advance. So I'm sure that they're talking about similar things in whenever the legislation goes through. But so that is the problem with Advance. I know a lot of you, we get them all the time, but I applied back in March, April, and because my loan got delayed or my thing got screwed up, I should still be eligible for it. I'm not arguing that. I'm simply telling you it was first come, first serve, and first come meant whoever got approved first. So I apologize. I wish we could do something about that, but once that money was done, it was done. Next slide, please. This is super, super important to me, and it should be super important to all of you too. We all know, and Tom touched on this before, there's going to be fraud around the EIDL and the PPP programs. If you think or you're fairly sure about somebody who has gotten the money or is using it for something that shouldn't be used, please report it, because you got to keep this in mind. If they're using money for something that's not supposed to be used for, they're stealing that money from you. They're stealing that money from every other small business in the country who may not get a loan because they took a loan that they didn't deserve. And that's across the board. I have zero patience for this kind of fraud. You're stealing money from people who need it to buy yourself. I mean, there's been a few high-level examples, but at any rate, I don't want to go on too much about this. But if you suspect fraud in either of these programs, you can call the OIG hotline. You can email them. They will keep your identity private. They will keep it secret. I will not even know about it. And honestly, when we've had a number of folks call us, they don't want to call themselves. And I basically tell them I can't call for you because the OIG won't really even accept it from me. They want it from the person. Next, please. Okay, the PPP. Next. So I'm going to go over, now this ended, right? So we can't get a loan anymore, but I'm going to go over the terms of it because they directly apply to the forgiveness part. So under the one that was passed and ended on August 8th, this was the second round, the loan provided could pay up to 24 weeks of payroll costs. And it could be used for interest, rent, utilities. The maximum loan side was 2.5 times average monthly payroll costs, and the purpose was to keep folks on the payroll or rehire quickly. I'm going to touch on this last time a couple of times because there still seems to be some confusion, even though it's over. The idea was to keep people solid, to keep people able to pay their bills. So for a lot of us who have had businesses, or a lot of you who run business, it was kind of anti-intuitive that I'm going to be paying people that aren't working, but that's actually exactly what this was designed for. Next slide, please. So these are the key changes when they changed it. It extended the covered period for loan forgiveness from 8 weeks to up to 24 weeks. It lowered the requirement from 75% of the loan must be used or spent on payroll costs to 60%. And by the way, if you did not even make that 60%, whatever percentage you use for payroll costs is forgivable. And I'll touch on that again later. But again, that's still something that's out there that's confusing. So just for argument's sake, if you borrowed $100, you needed to spend $60 on proceeds on the proper payroll costs. If you only spend $50, you will be forgiven the $50, but you will have to pay the further $50 off. Okay, but I'll go through that again in a minute. There are a number of safe harbor options, which we're going to go over for reductions in forgiveness due to reductions in payroll. Next slide, please. We also provide a safe harbor from reduction in loan forgiveness based on full-time equivalent employees. It increased to 5 years maturity of PPP loans as opposed to the original 2 years on or after June 5th. If you can convince your borrower and you have an early PPP loan that's on the 2-year time frame, if the borrower agrees and you mutually agree, you can change the maturity to 5 years, but that has to be submitted by the lender. I'm sorry, I said the borrower, by the lender. I extended the deferral period, and it removed the restrictions of participating in deferment of Social Security payroll tax. So that was actually one of the bigger things that they got a lot of pushback from folks, from small businesses around the country. So the Social Security payroll tracks can be deferred through December 31st of 2020, and the balance can be 50% paid 50% on December 31st of next year and 50% on December 31st of 2022. Next slide, please. So these are the eligible use of proceeds. When you're looking at your payroll forgiveness, you got to keep in mind this is stuff that you should have been using that are legitimate payroll costs, legitimate PPP forgiving areas. Payroll costs, interest payments on mortgage obligations, payments on rent, business utility payments, interest payments of other business debt that was incurred before February 15th of 2020. That's important. Remember that date. And to refinance SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan that was made from January 31st through April 3rd, 2020. So that's all eligible uses of the Paycheck Protection Program loan. Next. So what are the terms for loan forgiveness? I highlighted a couple of the more important ones. 60% have to go for payroll costs, 40% for non-payroll to get full loan forgiveness. Now, remember what I said. You can get partial loan forgiveness if you do less than 60%, but then anything over the percentage you used on payroll does become a loan. The payment can be deferred, interest, principal, fees. Maturity is 5 years for loans approved after June 5th, and 2 years for loans pre-June 5th. But again, like I said, if you can talk to your lender, you might be able to get that to 5 years. The SBA guarantee percentage, and this is for the lender, is 100%. Basically, the federal government is taking on the risk for the entire loan. Loan should have been dispersed within 10 calendar days of loan approval, and which is when the same time when the loan receive an SBA loan number. I know for a number of you there were issues, but it should have been basically the bank should have been able, or the lender should have been able to take care of it if they didn't get it out to you in 10 calendar days. But if that becomes an issue somehow under the forgiveness, we can talk to your lender and you and maybe find out and maybe assist you. But that was really more to let you know that once the loan was approved, that it had to be sent, that money had to be in your hand for within 10 days. Interest rates 1%. There are no collateral guarantees required. There's no upfront SBA servicing fees, and lenders cannot charge applicant to borrower fees. There are no prepayment penalties. Next. So these are some of the payroll costs: salary, wages, commissions, paid leave, or tips, up to $100,000 on an annualized basis per employee. So that does not mean you can pay off $100,000 over 24 weeks and call it a day. It's an annualized number. So divided by 12 or whatever accounting period that your accountant uses. Employer contributions for employee health insurance, including for self-insured, employer-sponsored health plan, you guys can read. So all these are allowed under payroll costs. Workers' comp is not included in this, and any pre-tax or after-tax contributions by employees is not included in a qualified payroll cost. State and local taxes are included in payroll tax and payroll costs. If you are a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, wage, commissions, income, and net earnings from self-employment, again, up to the first $100 on an annualized basis, is good for Paycheck Protection forgiveness. Next, please. Okay. This is probably more important than the other one. What is not included? Anything over an annualized $100,000 per employee. And you notice I keep saying per employee, that's in here. That's what the entire thing is based on. Everything is per employee, not aggregate. So keep that in mind, because that actually makes it easier for a lot of our small businesses. Any payments to independent contractors are not covered for payroll protection. That is because they have their own means of being compensated. If you have an employee who lives outside of the United States, and that's, the entire United States, right out of my head, but, like Puerto Rico and Guam. But if they're outside, so let's say you have an employee in India and they reside in India, you can't use their compensation for your PPP determination. Any wages qualified for sick leave or family leave that falls under the act you see here are not eligible, and employer state and local taxes paid by the borrower and assessed on employee compensation are not eligible. If you're a sole proprietor, your employer health insurance contributions and employer retirement contributions are not eligible. Next. Okay, so let's go over some of the highlights for forgiveness. Again, this is an introduction. There's no way we can cover every single thing in an hour's time. And quite honestly, I'm sure I do not have the expertise or the accounting knowledge to cover everything that's in the forgiveness. So the guidance documents are SBA.gov or Treasury.gov. But most importantly, you're really going to be talking with your lender about the forgiveness because they're the one that's going to put in the application for you, which we'll, again, touch in a minute. Next, please. Okay, here is the process. You're going to take your loan forgiveness application and fill it out. Hopefully, you're going to be talking to the lender who submitted it for you. The lender has 60 days to issue a decision to SBA. So what does that mean? You're working on the application. Obviously, you're going to go to the lender. In theory, the thought is that you're going to go to the lender with your application. You're going to go back and forth because eventually he or she is the one that has to submit it to the agency. They submit it to the agency. The agency has 60 days. The lender has 60 days to get it to SBA once you've submitted it, which is why I tell you, talk to folks at the lender beforehand. So the quicker you get it in, the quicker you can agree on with the lender, the quicker they can get it to SBA. But they have up to 60 days to get to SBA. The SBA has 90 days to review and determine if the borrower is eligible. So look at that right there. You're looking at 5 months that it could take to get the forgiveness application approved and in. So keep those dates in mind. You want to get this done. I'm not telling you to get it done fast and get it done as quickly as you can because you want to make sure it's accurate. That was one of the issues we had with the loan in the beginning. But I mean, it's a time frame. And the reason it's that long, because I know I'm going to get this question, is because there are going to be literally millions and millions of these being submitted. So you have to be fair to your lender. You have to be fair to the agency. They have to have time to review it. We are trying to avoid and minimize any mistakes and minimize any fraud that might be trying to be perpetrated on the agency as well as on the lenders. The lender is the one who's responsible for notifying the borrower. Just like it was with the loan, it will be the same thing with forgiveness. If only a portion of the loan is forgiven, remember what I said earlier. So if you don't meet that 60% criteria, whatever percent you made that went to qualified payroll expenses, that's going to be forgiven, but the rest becomes a loan. Okay, and it will be either due in 2 years or 5 years, depending on when the loan was taken out. Interest will accrue during the deferment period. So you won't have to pay the interest, but that doesn't mean it's forgiven. You still have to pay the interest, even though it's being deferred. Next, please. You can submit a loan forgiveness application anytime after the loan proceeds have been used up, on or before the maturity date of the loan, or at the end of the covered period if all the loan proceeds for which the borrower is requesting forgiveness has been used. So that's all pretty self-explanatory. Next. So there are 3 cases where you can use the EZ application. I don't know why they wanted to make this seem like IRS forms, but that's kind of what it did, since that always scares all of us. If you are self-employed with no employees and didn't get any PPP funds for employee salaries, okay? So you're self-employed, you don't have employees, you can have 1099s, that's fine. They're sole proprietors or contractors. But as long as you did not have an employee, you can use the application. Next to a little trickier, you're a business owner that did not reduce annual salary or annual wages of any employee by more than 25% during the period covered, and you didn't reduce the number of employees of average paid hours between January 1, 2020 and the end of the covered period after exemptions. We're going to go over the exemptions in a minute, okay? And the other one, you're a business owner with employees that didn't reduce annual salary or hourly wages by more than 20% for the covered period, and the borrower was unable to operate during the covered period at the same level of activity he had before. So obviously in New Jersey, that was a lot of us, right? There are a lot of businesses that couldn't and still can't operate. So you would be able to use the easy application. Anybody else, you need to use a full application, includes the methods for calculating FTE reductions. Again, to make that determination, keep in mind, you want to talk to your lender, make sure that you're covered. If you're going to use the easy application, make sure that it applies. Next. Thanks for trying. Business owner is exempt from reduction of loan forgiveness based on full-time employees if both of the following conditions are met. So remember I talked before about the safe harbor. There are two. This is option one. You reduce your employee levels in the period beginning February 15th, 2020 and ending April 26th, 2020, and that should be a 2 in front of the next one. Business owner that restored their FTE employee levels by not later than January 31st, 2020 to the levels that included February 15th. So what does that mean? You had employees, your business was running good. On February 14th, COVID hit, you got pounded, you got your PPP loan, and so you had to lay folks off beforehand. You got your PPP loan, you brought those folks back. You're good. You're exempt, even though you had to lay the employees off. Next slide. If you can document that you were unable to operate your business after February 15th due to compliance with federal state issues, etc., between March 1st in 2020 and December 31st, 2020. So basically what both of these things are kind of making sure that you can cover your rear end in that, here in New Jersey, there were a lot of businesses that were not able to operate. Restaurants are only recently opening. Gyms, unfortunately, are still not able to open. So this applies to you guys. So you took your PPP money. In theory, you paid that to your employees, even though the business was not operating. That's okay, as long as you can show it. Next slide, please. You can get an exception to an FTE. And again, this kind of touches on the previous one. If you couldn't rehire individuals who were employees of the business on the February 15th, or you were unable to hire similarly qualified people by December 31st, 2020. Also, if you made a good faith written offer to hire an employee and they said no, and you need to show it, you would also get that exemption. The assumption, of course, is that you made that offer for the same salary, the employee rejected it, and you maintain records showing that. So what I was telling folks, if you remember last time I said this to you all, got to get it in writing, whether it's email or whatever, as long as you can show, hey, look, I offered it to my employee refused to come back he's making money elsewhere, whatever. That's okay. You just have to be able to prove it. Next slide, please. So, sorry about that. I got a phone ringing someplace, but nothing I can do about it. If a business owner's reduction in employee's salary or wages have on the forgiveness loan amount. So if you reduce wages or salary or a person's employees owe more than 25%, you're going to have a reduction in the amount that you're going to be able to get forgiven. But it's on a per employee basis, not in the aggregate. So you had 4 employees making $10,000 a year. You reduced 2 of the employees to whatever that would be, let's say $2,000 a year, and the other 2 stayed at $10,000 a year. You would only be on the hook for the 2 that you reduced to $2,000 a year. It wouldn't be the overall total. So instead of 40 grand, you're now at $24,000, which is obviously almost a 50% reduction. That's not how it's counted. It's done per employee. How should business owners seeking loan forgiveness account for the salary wage reduction based on a reduction in the number of employees? It applies only to the portion of the decline in the employee's salary wages that is not attributable to the FTE reduction. Okay, so the salary wage reduction applies only to the portion of the decline in employee salary wages that is not attributable to the FTE reduction. I know for a lot of you, this is Greek. That's okay. That's why you're going to be using the lenders to work with you on this, but it gives you some guidance. Next, please. If you have to fire an employee for cause, or that person resigns, or they request a schedule reduction, you will not be penalized for that, but you just have to have it in writing. That's all. You can also not prepay expenses that you incurred. So if you did that, you're not going to get forgiveness for that. So you can do, for instance, interest on your mortgage. Doesn't mean you can pay off the entire interest for the year. You can pay off the interest for the period covered under the PPP loan. If your billing and payroll dates fall outside the 8 or 24-week window, there's allowances for that. Keep in mind, it's per employee. It's when they earn the money, and basically they earn the money the day they worked. So if you're on a 2-week payroll, right, they work for 2 weeks, they get paid a week or so later for that 2 weeks. That week, that payroll is outside the 24-week window. That's okay, because the 2 weeks were inside the 24-week window. Next. Again, if your rent, utility, or mortgage payments are due just outside of the 8 or 24-week period, you just have to prove that that's always been the case, and there's allowances for it. It's not a big deal. Are salary, wages, or commission payments to furloughed employees, bonuses, or had it paid during the covered period eligible for loan forgiveness? Absolutely. That is why the program was originally designed, to keep people whole during what we thought was going to be a relatively short amount of time. Again, up to the salary cap of $100,000. If you cannot run your business right now, partially or fully, you're still supposed to be using the PPP funds, because, again, that's what it's for. And I know for all of us, that's the most counterintuitive thing, but the PPP funds are to keep your employees and the business whole. So the idea was that you had to use them regardless of whether you could open your business or not. And yes, hiring of new staff was absolutely allowed under the PPP. Next. And that's me. I'm willing to take questions. I know that I also, in case I get stuck and Tom gets stuck, I'd have asked my lead lender relations specialist to be on the call. And if she gets stuck, we'll have to get back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Al. Let's try to get some questions in, and I'm willing to stay a little longer because that was a super useful but very comprehensive presentation. I want to make sure we get people's questions answered.
No problem. I'll hang around.
DeAndre, take it away. DeAndre,
sorry, that's the first. Yes, that is the first rule. Make sure you unmute yourself when we call on you. But to go through the question and answer portion, we're going to go down the list of everyone that submitted a question through the chat feature. I will message you in the chat feature, so just watch there. When we call on you, just unmute your mic and go ahead with your question. If you're having any difficulties, I will be here to assist with you. So we're going to get started. Jody, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
One more time. There you go.
Yep. We're good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing all of the things you do. I've been on pretty much all of them. So my question is about the EIDL. I got confused at some point here when he talked about the self-employed with no employees that didn't get PPP could also possibly have a loan forgiven. Does that include EIDL or no? Because to my understanding, EIDL loans are not forgiven, no way, no how. And my real question is, how is it that the smallest of businesses, those of us that are barely hanging on, especially since we still have not gotten the unemployment that is due to us, how is it that our loans need to be paid back? And when they talk about 3.75 being a low interest rate, I mean, the Fed is still at 0. So how is 3.75 that low? I mean, it's going to cost me $30,000 to pay back the small loan that I got that's pretty much used up already. And I still don't know if my business is going to be able to hang in there. It's just sad.
Okay, well, the rates for the EIDL loan are, I think, Tom, I don't know if you know this. I think that they are actually have to be approved at a congressional level. I'm not sure, but that is also determined by the disaster folks. The first part of your question, I was a little confused because I think you were mixing up EIDL and PPP, but you are correct. EIDL is not forgiven, at least not right now.
Does anyone think there's a possibility that they may be forgiven? Is there any talk of that?
It's not part of the legislation. It's not part of the HEROES Act, or to my knowledge, at least part of what we are discussing for the next round. Did you apply for a PPP loan as well, Jody?
No, I have no employees. So,
well,
you don't need to have
you are your own employee. I mean, it is possible. Am I right, Al, for a sole proprietorship to apply?
Well, not anymore. You can't apply PPP anymore.
Well, I know, but assuming we get it extended, which I think there's
absolutely. That was one of the things I used to stress. Sole proprietors as well as contractors.
I was when it first came out, I was told I did not qualify.
There was a lot of and I apologize for that, Jody. There was a lot of miscommunication that first couple of weeks, but it was. I mean, unfortunately, you didn't apply. But if it comes back again, you will be able to apply.
Okay.
And reach out to us, Jody. I'm sure you're following the news. If we can reach a deal, please reach out to us, and we'll help you take advantage of whatever we approve.
Okay.
And then I assume you're in touch with us about your unemployment. Is that correct?
I am. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry that that's taken so long. We still have some outstanding cases, including you, and we're going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that everybody who is entitled to unemployment compensation gets it, and it'll be backdated to when you applied.
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty.
When the PPP, the extension, what time frame are you looking at for that? Just so
we're looking at probably through the end of the year that you could apply.
Okay, and when will you be voting on that or however that works. When is that decision coming?
That's the big question.
You're asking the right question, which of course I can't answer because it's all, the deal. Like we proposed a very big bill in the House. We had a very small counter proposal from the Senate and the White House. We're trying to get them to meet us halfway. And I think, we could do it if sort of the reasonable Democrats and Republicans could just get in a room. We could do this in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I think, I still think we're going to get there. It's just going to take us 2 or 3 weeks longer than it should have.
Okay. I get your emails, so I presume it will be in there.
Yes, and I'm sure it'll be front page news when we reach a deal. So
okay,
you'll know.
Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, everyone. Just for everyone, we will ask if you can limit your question just to one, just so we can try to get as many questions in before we have to go. So if you can just limit your question to one, that'd be great for us. Thank you. Our next question comes from Mary. Mary, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. So my question was, because there was no real information on this, with these loans, what is the tax liability going to be? Because I'm sure there's going to be some, but nobody really seems to have that answer, and my accountant doesn't even know at this point. And is the EIDL 10,000 cash advance part of that forgiveness package with the PPP?
So the EIDL Advance is supposed to come out of the PPP loan. So it actually will reduce the PPP loan.
Okay.
Did that happen for everybody?
I believe it did. It was a little confusing when we were going through it. So I'm sure that my banker did that. We did talk about it.
Okay, so that's part of that. As to the tax implications of the loan, I am not sure that we've actually gotten full guidance on that. The only tax implication I know that we've gotten guidance on is if you use like employee. Actually, give me a second. I'll actually pull up the exact language. An employer that uses wages to calculate and receive forgiveness of a PPP loan cannot deduct those same wages on its tax return. And that's the only real tax guidance I know of at this point, as far as the loan is concerned.
Okay.
I don't know how the interest on it is going to be done or anything like that. I don't believe in that.
I'm sure there's much more to this question, but I certainly would not support any of this being taxable. If that's your question, that is not the intent of Congress. I would be very surprised if IRS were to interpret things that way. I think my staffer Ian Gray is on this call. Ian, am I correct about that?
You are indeed.
Good.
Okay.
So I would not include that on your list of 100 fears and anxieties. Right?
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from Julie. Julie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go.
Hello. Hi, Congressman, and thank you so much. And Al, thank you so much. I downloaded the EZ form, the 3508 EZ, and I don't know where to find my lender PPP loan number. And I'm also not sure on what the covered period should be. So
so go to your lender, and they should have the PPP number. Who is your lender? I can see by the look on your face. It's not.
I know. Well, I know what my SBA PPP loan number is.
But
I don't know what my lender PPP loan number is. And I got my loan through Square.
Okay. So the best thing you can do, and Cheryl, if you're on, and maybe they can recognize you, can clarify this if I'm wrong. If you use your loan number, call Square, because when you applied, you had to have applied or email them or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, if you have trouble, you can reach out to the congressman's office or my office, and we'll try to help you track it down. Okay. But you can use your SBA loan number to find if the lender had a different one. Most of the time, they use the same one because it was easy, but they didn't always.
All right. And are these... Square has kind of given us teases in email saying we're getting ready to send you the forgiveness instructions, but they haven't done it yet. But yet I heard that the SBA site is open for us to submit our forgiveness. So should I wait for Square?
It all depends on what your time frame was. You've got to put it through Square anyway. The lender, you can't do it directly. You've got to do it through your lender.
Okay.
So at a minimum, if you can get the stuff together that you need for the loan, this way when they send you whatever it is they're going to send you, you can get it and just send it right back to them.
All right. I got my loan. My loan came early. It came on May 5th. Should I have applied for my forgiveness already?
You could. I don't think you could have applied for your forgiveness.
Okay.
Already.
Okay. Good.
They only just recently opened, but you should do it fairly soon.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder for everyone on the call, if you do have a question, I see a few people raising their hands, please just use the chat feature, just so we can make sure we try to get to everyone that has a question. Our next question comes from Pauline. Pauline, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. I have a question that builds off the last one, and then I also have an idea / suggestion for legislation in the fall for the congressman. So if I can ask about the owner compensation forgiveness first, which is I have the form 3508EZ, the June version, and it says that only 2.5 months of my compensation, annualized of $100,000, can be deducted. Then I found out about an August 4th update from the PPFA guidance, which says it's 10.6 weeks. And then you just said that it would be 24 weeks annualized. So my question is, are these forms going to be updated to reflect these changes? Because I'm not going to believe what I read until I see it on the form that I have to fill out. And then what is the deadline to apply for forgiveness?
The deadline is based on what your initial period that you applied for was. When did you apply for the loan?
I received it May 26th.
Okay, so you were early. So you're in the 8-week period, right? You applied for...
Originally, yes, but then that changed, right? That was my cap in terms of what I could apply for was the 8-week. Yeah. But in terms of forgiveness, it seems to be...
Well, the forgiveness, I'm just doing. So the forgiveness is kind of based on the original period, but because we weren't ready to accept applications, they're accepting them now. As to what the form is that you're going to use, the best way to do it is to go on the SBA or Treasury site and see what the last form they have is. Because honestly,
I'm not worried about the form. I'm worried about the amount I can apply for forgiveness for of my salary. Like I want it to be obviously the most weeks possible, but this form shows the least weeks possible. So I'm trying to say, when are these changes going to be reflected so I can get the form that gives me...
You know what? Shoot me an email, alfred.titone@sba.gov, and I'll have one of my folks get back to you.
Okay. Because I'm sure many people on this call are having the same question and dilemma.
Cheryl, if you're on the call, raise your hand and maybe you can answer this. But go ahead.
Okay, and then my suggestion for the congressman or idea, which is, I know so many businesses and families are suffering from not being able to pay rent, and it's threatening both their ability to live in their homes and then their businesses. And I'm just wondering if it is possible to consider some sort of landlord relief whereby landlords could write off lost rent on their taxes just for the calendar year, just for the pandemic. And that, the idea is that this would keep businesses and people in their homes and while providing relief for landlords that otherwise wouldn't tolerate, losing so much rent. I'm a tenant, so I'm not speaking from the landlord's perspective, but I know my landlord loves this idea.
You know what? I agree with you, and I have raised this in the conversations. It's not always the most popular cause.
It sounds counterintuitive, but the effect is the same, right?
But it's the same, right? I mean, we're all part of the same system here, and there may be big giant corporate landlords that can afford to take a hit, but there are a lot of sort of family operated buildings where that's a family's breadwinner's main source of income.
Right.
And if all we do is just allow tenants to defer their rent payments, we're actually, I think the effect of that would be that a lot of those family owned units get bought up by the big conglomerates, which is not what we want.
Right.
In general, we do not want this crisis to lead to small businesses, being, bought up by the Walmarts of the world, right? Because the big guys can survive and the little guys can't. So I totally agree. And
we might have lost the congressman there. So trying to see if he reconnects.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right.
Yeah.
On to the next question. Our next question comes from Nicole. Nicole, can you hear us?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, Congressman. My question is about the PPP loan forgiveness application. We also were an early receiver of the loan, and we also received the EIDL Advanced grant, and we used basically all of the money between PPP and the EIDL Advanced grant on payroll. So technically, we'd meet all of the requirements to have the full loan forgiven, except that there's a portion of it that says to deduct your EIDL Advanced grant from the loan. So in my case, I would have to pay back the $7,000 that I received. And I know that seems like maybe not a big deal, but it is a big deal for my business as I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to navigate, the next year or so. So I was just kind of wondering if anything had changed on that front. I know that we spoke about this in the past, so just wondering what's going on there. And then also I know, Pauline, you had asked about the landlord forgiveness, and I think New Jersey does have a program for building owners under 10, but I don't know the details. Just wanted to chime in and mention that. And go ahead.
Al, do you want to start?
I'm not really sure. I wasn't really sure what she was asking there. So if you use it all for payroll, the PPP part should be totally forgivable.
Right, but she's asking about the EIDL Advance, which is not forgivable.
No, it is not forgivable.
Right, I know. That gets deducted from the forgivable amount. That's what you mean?
It actually got deducted from the original PPP.
Oh, okay. So that's already deducted from the original PPP.
As I understand it.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that it couldn't change.
Fully forgivable. But the EIDL is an advance. I mean, that was an advance on your EIDL and is unfortunately not forgivable.
Okay. Thanks, Congressman.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Mike. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I wanted to request that if you could send the slides out to everyone who was involved in this call, including the contact points for Al.
I'm not letting you have any of my names and numbers.
That's good.
Well, would you be willing to share the slides though, Al?
Sure.
Okay.
You guys have them.
DeAndre, is there a way for us to get that to?
Yes. Yes. Following this,
need your contact info, right, for everybody who wants those.
So following this call, I can definitely just send around the PowerPoint. excuse me, to everyone that RSVP'd. So everyone that's on the call, I can definitely send it out after. That's not a problem, Tom.
Okay,
that'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, DeAndre, if you get a chance, if you can look up Cheryl Painter, she's in there someplace. She can answer the question that Pauline had earlier more clearly than I did.
Okay.
In the meantime,
I believe she's on. So let me see if I can send her a quick message. In the meantime, we'll go to Lorna. I want to make sure I'm saying your name correct. Sorry if I'm not. Lorna?
You got it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for hosting this and being on call for all of us. We appreciate being able to have this avenue to talk to you. I just wanted to comment about the landlord discussion earlier. We own a couple of condos in South Jersey, and I think the funding is available for owners bigger than 2-unit owners like us. And I just talked to our property manager, and she said most of the owners in the condo area actually are in similar situation as us, with 1 or 2 unit type of ownership. And so I think there's a lot of us that's not being helped by the current available funding.
Yeah.
So if you can pursue that suggestion, I would really appreciate it.
Just so you know, I'm sorry to jump in, Tom.
Go ahead.
There is a landlord program that the state offers. It's on the New Jersey EDA website. I don't know a lot about it, but there is some kind of a forgiveness landlord program on the state EDA site. So you may want to look there. And that's quite honestly all I know about it.
Okay, thank you. So my question regarding the topic is, are we able to pay for medical insurance premium and get the expense forgiven? I'm a business owner. I have a couple of employees, and part of the benefit we have is the business would pay for medical insurance for myself as an owner of an S corporation. So is that something that is forgivable? I think I saw a slide, but I just want to make sure because it's pretty substantial for me
No, I get it. I believe it should be, but there are on the medical, there's some weird language, but if you're paying it for yourself or your employees, you're saying you're an S corp, right? You said
S corp, yes.
So you're paying you want to forget the employee part that you're paying, or the part for you, or both?
The business has always paid for my insurance even before COVID.
Okay.
All of the premium.
Yeah, I'm not sure all of it is, but I think part of it is. But that is an answer we can get for you. I don't remember offhand. It's been a while since I looked at this.
Is that something that our lender would be able to answer for us?
He should, or she should.
Okay.
That's why I'm telling everybody coordinate with your lender, because in the end, the lender is the one that submits it to us, and they're the one that has to approve your forgiveness package.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Al, really quickly, do you have a hard stop coming up soon? We just want to see how many questions
I can go for about another 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. We really, really appreciate it, Al.
No problem.
For everyone on the call, if we do not get to your question, we will ask that you please leave contact information, and someone on our staff will get back to you. If that's coordinating between our office and kind of getting you in contact with someone from Al's office, we just ask that you give us some contact information so we can reach out following the call. Our next question comes from Gina. Gina, can you hear us?
Yes. So I'm a pastor of a local church. We still haven't heard about our PPP, but we didn't put it in until a month ago. So we still didn't hear if we received it or not, but will there be any loans specifically for nonprofits that will be offered?
That's you, Tom.
Yeah, so if we restart, in other words, if we extend the program, it will be available to nonprofits. I don't know if we're going to set aside specifically a share of the funding for nonprofits, but nonprofits will be able to apply just as they were in the first and second rounds. I'm a little concerned that you've been waiting for a month, because at this point, it shouldn't be taking that long. You know, there was total chaos at the beginning. Now things are much calmer. So, you know, if you're concerned about that, we'd be happy to look into it with you,
Okay.
with your lender, see what's going on.
Okay, I'll leave my contact information.
Okay, we want to make sure if you qualify, you should be able to get it. So,
okay, thank you very much.
okay. Thanks, Gina.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Arnold. Arnold, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It seems that it's not straightforward as to whether or not we can apply for forgiveness today, or if we have to wait for our lender, or if we should fill out the forms. The SBA has provided an expectation that our lender is going to reach out to us. Are there any hard and fast rules as to, can we apply later this evening for our forgiveness, regardless of what our lender has or has not communicated to us, or you know, what's the real process here? Because at this point, I'm very close to having spent the PPP funds on payroll, and I'm very close to having spent the PPP funds back to the original percentage payroll versus rent. And you know, there's some questions as to some employees that have left, that have come back, that have asked for reductions of hours. So there's a bit of, I wouldn't say gaming the system, but there's certainly some nebulous issues in my forgiveness piece. And you know, I'm like, do I wait until I hear back from, you know, my lender or not? So
you don't necessarily have to. Well, you have to apply through the lender, but it doesn't. You got to wait for him to contact you. You can put your money. You can put your application stuff together and contact them. And you know, I always tell people, assume the default. Assume that I've got my paperwork together. I want you to review it. Where do I send it? Okay. That's, if it were me, that's what I'd be doing. But you can't do it directly to the agency. It has to go through the lender. So if I were you and you've got the stuff together, I mean, that's a great first step. If you can actually get, I don't know if you went with an online guy or a local guy.
I went through American Express. They had their window.
Okay, so probably the easiest thing for you to be is shoot them an email or whatever, and just start the process that way and hound them.
They've been very good at communicating with actual live people, which has been great. You know, I went through 3 different applications in the beginning, and American Express is the only one that said, well, I'm a live person in the United States and I can help you. And that's when I was like, okay, all my other applications, I'm not going to worry about them. I'm going to go with you. And in my last conversation with them, it came down to, they said, well, we have to get the guidance from the SBA. And I said, so they haven't given you a clear answer? And they're like, no, we're waiting to hear the final guidance from them. So that's where I've left it. I mean, I'm going to reboot that process tomorrow and reach out to them. But I just wanted to get your advice. You know?
Yeah, no, just push your lenders. And I'll tell that to everybody on the line. If you're ready to put in your forgiveness application, get the information together as much as you can, and then start talking to the lender.
Thank you for doing this call. I sincerely appreciate it. It's very helpful.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Patrick McGovern. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yep, I can. Thank you. So thank you, Congressman and Alfred, for hosting this Q&A here. My question, so I've got a business with, we're at 47 employees. We're at 49 when this all started. I had 2 questions. So I had 2 employees leave voluntarily before our covered period started. So, you know, they were included in the calculations, but I've seen where employees living voluntarily, they took other jobs, don't count against your forgiveness eligibility. we did let 2 part-time employees go. So I see in the exemptions it talks about if you had no full-time employee changes, but if you had part-time employee changes, are we eligible to use the easy form, or do we go to the other form?
I'm not, well, generally the count is full-time equivalent, so you could add the 2 employees. But my guess is that you're probably going to have to use the long form. But I'm not, but again, go through your lender. I mean, but that would be my guess.
So we'll clarify with the lender. So,
sorry.
The only other question, just, the topic of taxes came up before. And I understand, Congressman, you've said it before about how you don't want to see this taxable, but I believe the way it is now is it is going to be taxable when, the payroll expenses or other expenses are not deductible. Am I understanding that correctly, the way it is today?
Anything you use to justify the payroll forgiveness, you can't use as a tax deduction. You can't double dip. Think of it like that.
Yeah, no, and quite frankly, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean, that means we have taxable income. So, but it just the way it is set up today, it is going to be taxable unless something else changes with Congress.
Yeah. So my suggestion to folks that are in that position, talk to your accountant before you put the forgiveness application and see which situation is better for you. In some cases, when you start getting to that 25, 30 employee plus level, depending on your situation, it may be a better situation for you to take a partial forgiveness and the loan. So I would talk to your accountant, go through the numbers and see which makes the most sense for you.
Got it. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Christine. Christine, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you very much for hosting this call. My question has to do with mostly regarding the payroll portion. When we originally applied for the loan, which we got in May, it was 75 payroll, 25 non-payroll. Then it changed to 60% payroll, 40% non-payroll. Most of our expenses is payroll related. So if I wind up not being able to reach that cap of 40% non-payroll, that portion of the loan is not going to be forgiven. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, exactly the opposite. You have the least amount to worry about. You don't got to worry about the 40%. You have to worry about the 60%.
Oh, that is wonderful news. Okay, that's my first question. The second one, it's all related to payroll, but there was a little bit of a bonus paid out to some employees that worked above and beyond, and that was pre-planned. That can or cannot be included when I calculate the payroll.
It can.
It can. And then is it based on earned or paid? Because when I talked to the payroll company, they told me it was based on paid amounts, not earned amounts.
It's earned amount.
Okay. And then we are extending, we need the 24 weeks because we're a school. So over the summer, nobody works or a few people work. So I'm just confirming that because I'm waiting to apply for that forgiveness because I need that payroll for September and October. And my cutoff is like the middle of October for those 24 weeks. I'm still good there, right? I didn't blow anything with forgiveness at this point.
Well, you were breaking up with the last part. What was the last part about?
Okay, so originally we had to base it on 8 weeks to get payroll costs. But then from what I'm reading and talking to the banker, he said, no, it's 24 weeks from your date. I'm just confirming that because I know someone else asked that question too. And it's important that I need those 24 weeks because...
Yeah, it is 24 weeks. So it was extended. You just have more time to use the money. That's essentially what it is.
That, again, is good news. And then the last thing is it's actual dollars paid, not annualized, right? Because nobody makes over $100,000 or a nonprofit. But for my director, if you look at her previous payroll, like one payroll from last year, just the way that her hours were calculated, and you annualize that over a 24-week pay period, it appears as if she's an employee that makes over $100,000, but she never will make that, nor has she ever. So I just want to make sure I'm talking actual dollars paid to our employees because we paid everybody even though we closed the school.
The legislation says annualized. You're telling me that you're not open 12 months a year. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So.
And we're all part-timers. That's the other.
Right.
Nobody's a full-time employee.
Well, that's the part-timing. That's all fine, because the full-time equivalency is actually for the time, not the person. But
okay.
I don't have an answer for that. Everything says annualized. I'm sure that there's a way that we can figure that out. But I don't.
So
that's one thing I don't have an answer.
Okay, so I guess my question is, I have to not look at was paid, but was the most paid to any employee in a given period, and then multiply that times the pay period?
Well, no. So, okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, your highest paid employee makes, for 6 months, they make $30,000. Okay. Yep. You would still annualize that, but it would be annualized instead of 30,000 divided by 6, it would be 30,000 divided by 12.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah.
That's how it works, but it is annualized.
And that's just to categorize your employees, not so much the money you paid to your employees.
That one I can't answer. I'm going to say that it's actually the money paid to the employees, because they're looking at dollar amounts. But you can shoot me an email and I can double check that.
Terrific. That would be great. And then the pay, because our pay period also is in the middle of when we got our loan. Again, I'm looking at, I can move it accordingly, right? Or do I have to look at the payroll that was paid on a specific day for that? Because we get paid twice a month. But the loan was on the 5th and we get paid on the 10th. But
it's when the money was earned, not necessarily when it was paid.
Okay. All right. I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Martin. Martin, can you hear us?
Yes.
There you go.
I'm a self-employed and having a small business, and I'm receiving unemployment benefit. And regarding to the PPP forgiveness, can I still claim, or these two programs are mutually exclusive?
I'm sorry, one more time.
I'm receiving unemployment benefit, and it's a small business, sole proprietorship. And I'm also receiving PPP loan now. And while I'm claiming unemployment, would this still apply to the PPP forgiveness? Or these two programs, are they mutually exclusive?
I haven't heard that one before. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe Cheryl, if you're on, do you know the answer to that? Or email me and I'll lay it.
Okay.
DeAndre, Ian? I don't know. I'll get it to you.
Do you know the answer, Ian?
I don't want to weigh in authoritatively without knowing all of the details of the particular case, but generally speaking, if somebody is receiving what effectively resembles their income via PPP, they would not be eligible to also be receiving unemployment compensation. But I think it would be worthwhile to reach out to us offline, and we can give a more definitive answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cheryl says it mutually exclusive.
I don't know if Maureen, were you able to hear Al's answer? I'm sorry. I think I cut in there for a second.
No worries. I believe they're going to be mutually exclusive. That's what my lead lender person tells me. But you can have somebody look at it and we can confirm.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good day.
Both. Our next question comes from Patrick. Patrick, can you hear us?
You're still muted.
And I'd already asked my question. I don't know if there was another Patrick out there.
Yes,
there is. Thank you, Patrick. Let's see. There you go.
Still muted.
You might have to give yourself access to the like Zoom access to your microphone. I'll work with you really quickly. Let's try one more time, Patrick. No, I'll work with you offline really quickly, Patrick. We'll go to our next question. Anne, can you hear us?
Anne Bunyaner, that's
Yes, okay. Ma'am. I know. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
that's okay. Just there's always, you never know. There's more than one Anne. Again, thank you for doing this. I just have a question. If I started the process for the EIDL loan, got the advance, but did not proceed further in the loan, did not get a loan, does that EIDL advance need to be repaid?
No.
Terrific. Thank you so much. That's it.
You're as fast as I thought it was going to be. Thank you, Anne. Our next question, our next question will come from Carolina. Carolina, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So my question, I think, sort of linked to the one a couple regarding the unemployment. So I received a PPP funds. I'm sorry. I'm self-employed and I'm an LLC single member, so it's just me. And when I received the PPP funds, I haven't really distributed them yet, because distributing really just means transferring from one bank account to another. But when I certify for unemployment every week, you're supposed to claim if you've made any money. Since the period of the 8 weeks was extended to 24 weeks, I've been just holding off until the end of my loan period to do those, supposed distributions, since they don't really count. I mean, it's not really a distribution. It's just, it's just a transfer. I guess my question is, can I choose what weeks I claim for those, certifies for the purposes of unemployment?
Okay, I can't talk to the unemployment. That's done through the state. Okay. But what I can tell you is you can't collect both for the same time period.
Right. So can you stop one for a period of time, because PPP only covers 2 months.
So the PPP covers the period that it covers, right?
Right.
You cannot, so you should, so I got to be careful what I say here. So the bottom line is I would pull the PPP first and then the unemployment. And if you haven't done that, I talk to an accountant or something, because the whole idea of this is to keep people whole, but they also don't want people double dipping.
Right. Which I understand. It's just confusing as to when to pull one, and then you pull one, and then you can go back on unemployment.
Well, keep in mind the PPP has to be spent over a certain period of time, right? And that clock starts ticking when you get the loan, right? So
when you get the loan, yeah, I guess that's a conversation with my lender, because I never actually received that whole disbursement, the 10-day disbursement rules. I combed up and down all of the rules, and I never actually read that. So for me, the disbursement really hasn't happened. But I guess it's a matter of talking to the lender, right? Because disbursement for a self-employed individual could really mean just transferring from your business account to your personal account.
Yeah. So just so we're clear, and then if you want, you can talk to the congressman's office or mine. Once that loan was approved, the lender should have given you whatever amount you were approved for within 10 days. Now, whether he put that into a business account or not, that's neither here nor there. They should have been the full amount for the covered period.
Right. Okay, so that just counts as that's proof enough of the disbursement, just the receiving of the loan.
Well, that is the disbursement. Yes.
Right. Okay, I see. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone for hanging in there. I know we tried to get through as many questions as possible. If you have any questions that are still lingering out there that we were unable to get to or things like that, please just make sure you include your contact information so someone on our staff can follow up. Thank you, Al, for hanging in there. I know we're a little bit over the time, so I'm going to throw it over to Congressman quickly for some closing remarks, but thank you everyone for being patient and hanging in there with us.
No problem.
Thanks again, Al and everybody. And thank you for being patient and hanging in there with the U.S. Congress as we try to work all these things out. We went very, very quickly at the beginning, and some of the problems are just the inevitable result of that. And now we're arguably moving a little bit too slowly to do the next stage. But I'm working very hard on it. I'm still optimistic that we will reach some agreement that's going to help folks out a little bit more. And most important, I know this isn't the subject of today's call, but most important, we've got to bring COVID-19 under control because there are no great answers to any of these questions. And we want to get back to something that looks like normal so that you guys can just worry about running small businesses and we can worry about how to help you in a normal economy and not have to go through this for month after month after month. So thank you again for your patience and your perseverance. Please stay in touch with our office if you need any additional questions answered or assistance with a lender or the SBA or the unemployment system. And we'll always do our very best to help. Thank you all again.